Hello class. So today, after we learned about demand and supply, what we're going to do is we're going to put the demand and supply curves together. So the demand curve is that of the latte, and the supply curve is that of latte too. So we're going to see how, when you put demand and supply together, what happens to the market. So once we look at this, we find that, okay, P has reached equilibrium level when quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So here's a new definition for you. Equilibrium is when P is the price. It is the point where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So if you look at, let's say, any other point, so let's say we're looking at this point, at $5, quantity demanded is somewhere here, quantity supplied is somewhere here. So they're not equal, so this price, $5, is not the equilibrium. If we are down here, quantity supplied is somewhere here, quantity demanded is somewhere here, and they're not equal to, so this is not at the equilibrium. So the only place where we have equilibrium is at $3. At $3, the demand curve and the supply curve intersect, and that's the point where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. And it's at $15, or 15 units and $3. Surplus or excess supply is when quantity supplied is more than quantity demanded. So let's say at $5, when price is $5, quantity demanded of lattes is 9 lattes. So if the seller is charging $5 in the market, only 9 people will come and get lattes from the seller. On the other hand, since the seller is expecting $5, the seller has produced a lot more lattes because according to the law of supply, as prices are higher, sellers want to sell more. And quantity supplied is 25. So in this case, there is a surplus because the seller is waiting to sell 25 units of latte, but only 9 people came and purchased it. So there is an excess of 16 lattes. So in this case, whenever a seller has excess products and wants to get rid of it, well, one thing they can do is just throw it away, but that's just throwing away money. The other thing is they just sell it at a lower price. So when they do that, the sellers try to increase sales by cutting price. So how do they do that? Okay, well, they lower price to $4. So when they lower the price to $4, now because of law of demand says as price goes down, quantity demanded goes up. Now quantity demanded has risen slightly, and since prices are lower now, quantity supplied is falling. And the same thing keeps on going, but still we have a surplus. The surplus is smaller, but we still have a surplus. So there is still excess amounts just laying around. So in this case, the supplier keeps on reducing prices until the market reaches this equilibrium. So this is where quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. The seller brings in exactly 15 units of worth of raw materials to make coffee, makes the coffee, sells them at $3, and the buyers buy exactly 15 units of latte. And so the market is efficient in this case. There is no excess. Now, what if there is excess demand? That is, there is more being demanded than what is being supplied. So supposing the sellers think that, no one wants to drink coffee or latte here, people drink tea here, so we're going to charge $1. But at $1, there's a lot more people who want to buy lattes. Let's say 21 lattes. But the sellers have, since price is so low, the sellers have enough to supply to only 5 of them. So that means that there is a shortage of 16 units because there's more people wanting to buy it, not that many willing to sell it. So there's a lot of people waiting in line to purchase it. So that's when you see long queues. This is when this scenario is very visible during Black Friday. You have people waiting in line for hours upon hours waiting for the store to open because prices are so low. People want to wait in line to get it. And so there's always this jostle to get your hand in the first product that you see. So whenever this is the case, if there's a shortage, sellers can raise their price, which causes quantity demanded to fall because as price goes up, quantity demanded will fall, but quantity supplied will rise. And this keeps on going because there is still a shortage, so this keeps on going until the price reaches the equilibrium. And that's where the market clears. So now we know that Y is $3, the market clearing price, or the equilibrium price. It has a lot of names: market clearing price, equilibrium price, or just the price. It is the place where there is no excess or there is no shortage. The market clears and everything is good. Now, here are certain things that we want to also make sure we understand. When we say there's a change in supply, it means that the supply curve has actually shifted its position. And we're going to see an example afterwards. And this happens when a non-determinant of supply changes. So one of those things that we listed, like technology, input costs, and all those things, when they change, that's the thing that shifts the supply curve. When we say change in quantity supplied, we just say there's a movement along the supply curve. On the other hand, when we say change in demand, we say it's a shift of demand curve. Just like supply, when we say change in supply, it's a shift in supply curve. When we say there's a change in demand, there's an actual physical shift of the demand curve. And this happens when one of the non-price determinants of demand, like number of buyers, income, changes. And a change in quantity demand is when there's a movement along the demand curve. So the demand curve hasn't changed, we're just moving along the demand curve. So what does this mean? Let's look at an example to actually try to understand it, and we're going to see what happens. So whenever we want to measure any change of an event, what's going to happen to price and quantity, we first have to determine what shifts the supply curve, whether that event is going to shift the supply curve or demand curve or both. Normally we do it one at a time, so we're going to see whether it shifts the supply curve or the demand curve. And then we have to decide which direction does it shift. Does it shift to the left or does it shift to the right? And then we're going to use the diagrams to see how the shift affects price and quantity. So these are the three steps that we are going to do to see how equilibrium changes. Now let's look at this assignment where we're going to do this. Let's going to see, all right, so supposing the situation that happened is this. So price of automobiles, or price of gasoline has been decreasing, okay? What is going to happen to the market of automobiles? So this is what we want to see. So let's look at an example to see what happens, okay? So our scenario is, let's make it a little bigger. So price of automobiles, or price of gas has been decreasing. Okay, so to see what affects, okay, is demand being affected or supply being affected? So let's list. Now let's see that, okay, what are the factors that affect demand? Okay, so we just listed demand. What affects demand? One is number of buyers. Two is the type of product. Sorry. Is it a complement or substitute? Okay. Let's make this a little bigger. And then number 3 is income. Number 4 is expectations. And number 5 is tastes. All right, what affects supply? Let's list them. Input prices. Technology. Expectations. And number of subs. So these are the factors that affect demand and supply. Now we want to know, okay, what happens? So how do we answer this question? First, let's actually copy the question, and then we can see what happens is what will happen to the market of automobiles. Now from here we want to note, okay, so these are the factors that affect demand and supply, so we listed them. And now we want to see which one is affected. So let's first draw a generic demand and supply curve, and we're going to note from there. So this is my y-axis. Okay. This is the other one. This is my demand curve, and this is my supply curve. Okay. So we should always label the axis. So this is price, and this is quantity. Let's make that okay. So now we have this. Now we want to know, okay, what happens when the price of gas is decreasing? So what is going to happen to the market of automobiles? Okay, so how do we answer this? We initially start here. We have, this is my demand. This is my supply. Okay, so we know that, all right, well, if price of gas is decreasing, what will happen to, what factor changes? That's what, if price of gas falls, does my taste for cars change? Well, not necessarily. I mean, if I'm driving a car, I'll still drive a car. There's no change in expectation. What will happen in the future? At least we don't know what happens. We don't have any information about income, so we don't know if that has changed or not. But what we know is that gas and cars, they are complements. Why? Because they go together. If you have an automobile, you need gas to run it. So we need to then figure out, all right, if we have that, then one thing we know is gas and cars are complements. The fall in price of gas will cause demand of cars to rise. So if that's the case, then if demand will rise, so this is the observation, okay? What changed? We know that demand is changing. Which way will demand go then? Then the demand curve shifts to the right. Okay. As for now, we're not saying anything about supply to change. So input price is not changing. Well, because we're studying the automobile market, we're studying cars. So none of the prices that are used that affects the production of cars has changed. The technology to produce cars at least hasn't changed in the short run that we're looking at. Expectations of car sales hasn't really changed. Our number of sellers of cars haven't really changed that we know of. So we know that demand curve shifts to the right, so let's shift the demand curve to the right. And so we shift the demand curve to the right, to the red one. So now, after that happens, so what's going to happen to price and quantity? So we can write that. The old price was, let's say this, and the old quantity is this, okay? So let's label them P0 and Q0. The new prices now here, and the new quantity is here. So the new price and quantity are Q1 and Q1. So after all this happened, what we can say is price of cars will increase from P0 to P1, and quantity bought and sold will rise from Q0 to Q1. And this is how we answer the question. So if the price of gas has been decreasing, what will happen to the market of automobiles? Well, we listed the factors affecting demand and the factors affecting supply. We figured out which of the factors is affecting the market of automobiles, and we decided that it's because price of gas is decreasing and automobiles and gas are complements, so it's going to basically affect the market of automobiles because it is a complement to gas. And so when gas prices fall, it's going to cause the demand for cars to rise. Demand shifts to the right. And from the graph, we can see that price then increases and quantity also increases. So this is how we basically answer the question. Now let's say we want to answer the other one. So let's delete all this. Okay, let's also delete all this. So we want to know price of gas has been decreasing. What will happen to the market of, the other question was, electric vehicles. Okay. Question mark next to that. So when we do that, all right, let's do the same thing. We first draw our demand and supply curve. Okay, so we draw that. So we have our price, we have our quantity, and we have our generic demand and supply diagram. We have demand, and we have supply. Okay, let's label them. Demand and supply. So now from here, we can see that, okay, price of gas is falling. What will happen to the market of electric vehicles? So if I'm in the market to buy cars now, and if price of gas is cheaper, I might buy a regular car. I don't even want to buy a regular car because, still electric vehicles, they're nice. They don't, burn as much fossil fuels, but it's hard to get them charged. It's not that convenient, so it's not that easy to maintain them. So if price of gas is falling, and I may want to buy a regular car and not an electric vehicle. So in this case, if gas and electric vehicles are, we can consider them to be substitutes. So if we list all these things and we go through them, you will see that, okay, well, gas is a substitute of electric vehicles. So now, if we are thinking that way, then we can say gas and electric vehicles are substitutes. A fall in the price of gas will lower demand for electric vehicles. So if demand falls, what's going to happen? Demand will shift to the left. Demand will shift to the left. So if demand shifts to the left, what's going to happen? We will shift demand curve and see what happens. If demand shifts, what happens to price? So let's say initial price was, again, we name it, oh, why did that color change? Ah, it's okay. So we have this and this, and we have this and this. So we have, initially the price was P0, now it fell to P1. Initially quantity was Q0, and it fell to Q1. So after demand shifts to the left, we can say price of electric cars will fall from P0 to P1, and quantity bought and sold will fall from Q0 to Q1. And that's how we answer these questions. So same way, if we come up with another scenario, we'll answer it the same way. So at the end of your, if you want more practice, I'll put up some questions at the end of this chapter and you can try them. And that will help you basically understand what's going on. So the method is just the same. List what the factors affecting demand and supply, and then figure out which one is causing the change. And then just draw it on the graph and see how that affects price and quantity. Okay? Well, hope this helps, and keep on practicing. And then if you have any questions or